The woman woke up before the alarm rang, just like she did every morning. The room was quiet, expensive, and too clean to feel warm. Light from the city slipped through the tall glass windows, resting on polished furniture that had been chosen by designers, not by feeling. She lay still for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, reminding herself of the list already forming in her mind. Meetings, calls, decisions, numbers, people waiting for her approval, people afraid to disappoint her. She sat up and reached for her phone. Messages were already there. Board members asking for confirmation. Assistants sending reminders. Financial updates blinking in short, sharp lines. She did not feel excited or proud when she saw them. She felt heavy. This feeling had been following her for years now. No matter how much she achieved, it stayed with her like a quiet shadow. In the mirror, she saw a woman many people admired. Strong face, calm eyes, perfect posture. A leader. That was the word people used when they talked about her. They said she was fearless, focused, untouchable. What they did not see was how tired her eyes were when no one else was watching. She dressed quickly, choosing a simple outfit. She did not care about color anymore, only comfort and control. The driver was waiting downstairs. He opened the door without speaking. He knew better than to try small talk in the mornings. As the car moved through traffic, the city felt loud even through the thick glass. People rushing to places they believed mattered. She used to feel the same way at the office. Everything ran on time. It always did when she was around. The building was tall and cold, full of glass and sharp corners. People stood straighter when she entered. Conversations paused. Some smiled with respect, some with fear. She noticed all of it, but it no longer gave her any sense of power. The morning meeting went on for hours. Profit numbers, timelines, pressure from investors. Voices spoke, but she heard them like sounds underwater. She answered when needed. Clear, firm, professional. No one questioned her authority. Still, a strange feeling pulsed inside her chest, like something knocking softly, asking to be noticed. After the meeting ended, she returned to her office and closed the door. The silence was thick. On her desk sat a small photo frame turned face down. It had been that way for years. She never threw it away. She also never turned it back over. Some memories are easier to carry when you don't look at them. Her assistant knocked and entered carefully. There was another meeting scheduled after lunch. Another reminder. She nodded without really listening. When the door closed again, she leaned back in her chair and finally let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. She looked at the clock. For the first time in a long while, she made a quiet decision. She picked up her coat and bag and left the office early. No announcement, no excuse, just silence. The driver looked surprised when she gave him directions that were not part of the routine. He did not ask questions. The car slowed near a public park she remembered passing many times, but never stopping at. She asked him to wait and stepped out. The park was ordinary. No careful design, no guards. Just benches, trees, and a small playground filled with noise. Children were shouting, laughing, arguing, crying. Parents sat nearby, some tired, some smiling, some lost in their phones. The air smelled of grass and dust. It felt real in a way her office never did. She stood still for a moment, unsure why she was there. She hadn't planned this. Her schedule never allowed space for things like this. Yet something made her walk forward. She sat on an empty bench near the playground. The wood was rough. She didn't mind. She watched children climb, fall, run, and get back up again. They didn't worry about mistakes. They didn't care who was watching. They lived fully in the moment. Her eyes followed one child in particular. The child wasn't the loudest or the fastest. This one moved slowly, carefully, helping another child climb the slide. When one child fell and started crying, this child stopped playing and sat beside them, patting their back until they calmed down. The scene touched something deep inside her. She felt her throat tighten. Memories surfaced without warning. A smaller hand in hers. A laugh she once heard every day. A promise she once made and broke. She turned her face away quickly, hoping no one noticed the tears forming in her eyes. She reminded herself she was not weak. She had survived worse things than this. Still the tears stayed, blurring her vision. The child looked toward her then. Their eyes met. The child did not look afraid or shy, just curious. After a moment, the child smiled and waved. She hesitated. Smiling back felt dangerous, like opening a door she'd kept locked for years. Still, she raised her hand slightly and returned the wave. The smile the child gave her in return was simple and honest. No expectations, no judgment, just kindness. She felt something shift inside her chest, a feeling she could not name, warm and painful at the same time. The afternoon sun slowly moved across the playground. She stayed on the bench far longer than she intended. For the first time in years, she was not thinking about work. She was just watching life happen. She did not know yet that this ordinary place, on an ordinary day, was about to change her in ways she never expected. She only knew that, for the first time in a long while. She did not want to leave. And somewhere deep inside her, the woman who had built an empire quietly began to remember the part of herself she had lost. She stayed on the bench longer than planned. At first she told herself it was just to rest her mind before returning to work. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. Something about the playground kept pulling her attention back. Like an old song she hadn't heard in years, but somehow still remembered. The same child kept moving around the playground, careful and calm. While other children shouted and raced, this one noticed small things. A loose shoelace, a dropped water bottle, a child standing alone near the fence, pretending not to care. Each time, the child stepped in quietly, without trying to be noticed. She watched closely. In her world, kindness usually came with expectations. Favors were remembered. Help was recorded. But this child acted without waiting for praise. It confused her in a way that felt uncomfortable. The wind picked up slightly. Leaves brushed across the ground. She pulled her coat tighter and leaned back, trying to tell herself she was just tired. Still, her eyes kept returning to that child. After a while, a ball rolled away from the swings and stopped near her feet. She bent down and picked it up. The child noticed and ran toward her, slowing down as they got closer. "Thank you," the child said softly. The voice was gentle but clear. She handed the ball back without speaking at first. It had been a long time since a stranger spoke to her without fear or respect mixed in. The moment felt disarming. "You're welcome," she finally replied. Her voice sounded different to her own ears. Softer, less controlled. The child smiled and did not run off right away. Instead, they stood there, looking at her face carefully, as if studying it. "Are you sad?" the child asked. The question landed heavier than she expected. No one had asked her that directly in years. People usually assumed she was fine or too strong to need asking. She almost gave a quick answer. Almost said no. Almost smiled and turned away. But the honesty in the child's eyes stopped her. "Sometimes," she said. The child nodded, as if this made perfect sense. "My guardian says it's okay to feel sad. It means you care about something." Her chest tightened. She swallowed slowly. "That sounds like a wise guardian." The child shrugged with a small smile. "They try." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the playground filled the space between them. The woman realized she wasn't trying to escape the noise anymore. It grounded her. "Do you work a lot?" the child asked suddenly. She almost laughed. "Yes," she answered. "Too much, probably." "My guardian works a lot too," the child said. "But they always try to come home before bedtime." The words stung in a way she did not expect. Bedtime, stories, goodnight kisses. Things she once promised would never be missed. "I think that's important," she said quietly. The child nodded again, satisfied. Then, without warning, another child tripped nearby and scraped a knee. Crying followed. The child immediately turned and ran to help. Forgetting all about the conversation, she watched as the child sat beside the crying one, offering comfort with quiet patience. No rushing. No telling them to stop crying. Just present. Something inside her cracked just a little more. She closed her eyes and breathed slowly. A voice spoke beside her. "They're always like that." She looked up to see an adult standing nearby. Their clothes were simple. Their face showed signs of tiredness, but there was warmth in their eyes. "They've been through a lot," the guardian continued. "Hard things make some people kinder." She nodded without asking questions. Somehow she already understood. "They remind me of someone I used to know," she said before she could stop herself. The guardian did not push. "Good memories." She hesitated. "Both." The guardian smiled gently. "Those are usually the strongest ones." Time passed quietly. The sun moved lower. She realized she had missed several calls. Her phone buzzed in her bag, asking her to return to her world of deadlines and decisions. For the first time, she ignored it without guilt. When it was time for the child to leave, the child walked back to her one last time. "I hope tomorrow is a better day for you," the child said. She nodded, feeling something rise in her throat. "I hope so too." As they walked away, she remained on the bench, staring at the empty playground. She did not yet understand why this brief meeting mattered so much, but deep inside, something that had been silent for years was beginning to speak again. And this time, she was listening. She returned to the playground the next day without telling anyone. This time, she did not pretend it was a random stop. She left her office earlier again, ignoring the surprised looks and unanswered messages. Something inside her told her this was important. Even if she could not explain why, the playground looked the same. But it felt different now, familiar, as if it had been waiting for her. She walked slowly and chose the same bench. For a brief moment, a quiet fear passed through her. What if the child was not there today? What if yesterday meant nothing to them the way it clearly meant something to her? Then she saw them near the swings. The child was pushing another child gently, laughing when the swing went too high. The sound of that laugh hit her unexpectedly hard. It carried something she had buried deep. Ease, trust, joy without conditions. She felt her shoulders relax. She did not realize how tense she always was until that moment. From a distance, the guardian noticed her and gave a small nod of recognition. There was no surprise in their eyes, as if they had known she would come back. She returned the nod. Unsure why it mattered so much, she stayed seated, letting things happen naturally. The child noticed her after a while and waved again. This time she waved back without hesitation. The child eventually walked over and sat on the other end of the bench, leaving a polite space between them. "You came back," the child said. "I did," she answered. "I think I wanted to." "That's good," the child said simply. She smiled. No one had spoken to her like this in years. No expectations. No hidden meaning. They sat together quietly, watching the playground. The silence did not feel awkward. It felt shared. "My guardian says this park used to be louder before," the child said, "before some people moved away." "Things changed," she replied. The child thought about this. "Not all change is bad," she nodded slowly. In her world, change usually meant loss or pressure. Hearing it described so gently felt strange. After a moment, she asked, "Do you like coming here?" The child nodded. "It helps me remember things." "Like what?" she asked. "Like how to be kind even when things hurt," the child said. Her breath caught. She looked at the child carefully now, trying to understand how someone so young could carry so much quiet wisdom. "That's not an easy thing to remember," she said. The child shrugged again, the same motion as the day before. "Sometimes forgetting hurts more." Those words stayed with her. The guardian joined them a little later, holding 2 paper cups with warm drinks from a small stand nearby. One was offered to her. "Thank you," she said, surprised by the small kindness. "You look like you could use it," the guardian replied with a gentle smile. They drank in silence for a moment. "You don't seem like most people who come." "Here," the guardian said carefully. She almost laughed. That might be true. You don't have to explain, the guardian added. Everyone carries something. She stared at her cup. Normally, she controlled conversations. This time, she let the moment lead. I lost someone important, she said quietly. The words felt strange leaving her mouth. She had not said them out loud to anyone in a long time. The guardian did. Not interrupt. I thought working harder would make the pain disappear, she continued. Instead, it just made everything else disappear too. The child listened without pretending to understand everything. They didn't need to. I think they would want you to rest sometimes, the child said softly. Her eyes burned. She turned her face slightly, pretending to watch the playground. Maybe. She whispered later. The child stood up to leave, but paused, looking back at her. Will you come again? The child asked. She did not answer right away. Her life did not leave room for promises, but this felt different. Yes, she said. I will. As they walked away, she felt something settle inside her. Not happiness yet. Not peace, but hope. And for the first time in years, hope did not scare her. She kept her promise. Over the following days, she returned to the playground again and again. Sometimes she stayed only a few minutes. Other times, she sat until the sky began to change color. Each visit felt different, but all of them felt honest. The woman who moved through boardrooms with sharp focus found herself. Slowing down without trying, she started noticing details she had ignored before. The way the swing squeaked in the same rhythm, the cracked paint on the slide, the sound of laughter mixing with the wind. None of it was perfect, and none of it needed to be. The child greeted her every time as if she had never left. No questions. No disbelief, just presence. One afternoon, the playground was unusually crowded. A group of children were arguing near the climbing frame. Voices rose. One child shoved another in frustration. The mood shifted fast. Before any adult could react, the gentle child stepped in. They did not shout or accuse. They simply stood between the two, lifting their hands and speaking quietly. Everyone breathe, the child said. No one is bad here. The words were simple, but they worked. The children paused, confused, then slowly backed away. She felt her chest tighten sharply. Those words echoed something she once needed to hear, but never did. The guardian stood beside her and whispered. They learned that the hard way. She wanted to ask what that meant, but she held back. Some stories arrive when they're ready. Later, as the crowd thinned, the child sat beside her again, swinging their legs. Sometimes grown-ups forget how to calm down, the child said. She let out a small laugh that surprised herself. That's very true. The child looked up at her face. Do you get angry? She considered the question. I get quiet, she said, and then tired. The child nodded seriously. Being tired hurts. She felt her eyes sting. That evening, when she returned home, the apartment felt emptier than usual. She walked through the rooms slowly. The quiet no longer felt peaceful. It felt unfinished. She stopped in front of a cabinet she rarely opened. Inside was an old box. Dust covered the lid. She hesitated, then lifted it. Inside were small things. A folded drawing, a worn toy, a photo. She picked up the photo with shaking hands. She had avoided this for years. Her breath felt shallow. Its memories rushed in without permission. Missed moments. Promises delayed until later. A belief that providing was enough. Tears fell freely now, landing on the photo she once could not bear to look at. The next day at the playground, she was quieter than usual. The child noticed immediately. You hurt today, the child said. Yes, she answered honestly. But that's okay. The child smiled softly. That means it's healing. Something inside her broke open then. She covered her face as tears finally came. Right there on the wooden bench in front of strangers and sunlight and children at play, she cried for the past she could not change and the version of herself she had lost. A small hand touched her arm. It's okay, the child said gently. You're still here. Those words reached deeper than any advice she had ever received. She breathed slowly until the sobbing eased. When she looked up, the playground did not look at her with judgment. Life had simply kept going around her, leaving space for her pain. She realized then that strength did not mean staying closed. It meant staying, and for the first time in many years, she stayed. The days that followed felt quieter, but not empty. She still went to the office. She still attended meetings. The world she had built did not suddenly disappear, but something inside her had shifted, and she could not ignore it. She stopped rushing through her mornings. She ate breakfast instead of skipping it. She listened when people spoke, really listened, instead of waiting for her turn to talk. Some noticed the change and were confused. Others felt it without understanding why. In meetings, she began asking questions she had never asked before. Not just about numbers or deadlines, but about people. How teams were doing, what support they needed. At first, the room would go quiet, unsure how to respond. Then slowly, real answers started coming. She realized how many people around her were carrying quiet weight. Just like she had been. In the evenings, she returned to the playground. Not every day, but often enough that it became part of her life instead of an escape. The child and the guardian welcomed her as they always did. Their warmth never felt forced. It felt earned through shared moments. One afternoon, she brought a small bag with her. Inside were simple snacks and a book she remembered from long ago. She did not announce it or make a big deal out of it. She just sat and shared. The child listened closely as she read, eyes wide, smile soft. When she finished, the child clapped quietly, as if the moment itself needed to be protected. "You read nicely," the child said. She smiled. "I forgot how much I liked it." The guardian watched with an expression that held both gratitude and curiosity. Later that day, as the sun fell low, the guardian spoke again. "You know, they said life didn't turn out how I imagined. But moments like this make it feel okay." She understood that feeling now. "I used to believe success meant never stopping," she replied. "Now I think it means knowing when to—" The guardian nodded. Weeks passed. Word spread quietly through her company that changes were coming. Flexible hours, support programs, time encouraged for family instead of stolen from it. Some thought it was risky. She thought it was necessary. Late one evening, she finally turned over the photo frame on her desk. She did not flinch this time. She traced the edges gently, letting memory and pain exist together without pushing either away. She did not blame herself as harshly anymore. She understood now that regret was not meant to punish. It was meant to guide. On a warm afternoon, the playground held a small community gathering. Nothing fancy, just shared food and laughter. The child ran between groups, happy and free. At one point, the child stopped and looked back at her. "You smile more now," the child said. She laughed softly. "I feel more too." That evening, as she walked home, the city lights looked different. Not softer, just more alive. She realized something important. The miracle was not the child, not the playground. The miracle was remembering how to be present, and that was something no title or position could ever give her. She walked on with steady steps, knowing her life was not perfect, but it was finally real. Life did not slow down just because she had changed. Emails still arrived. Markets still shifted. Problems still showed up without warning. But now, she faced them differently. She no longer felt like she was running from something all the time. One morning, while reviewing reports, she came across a document she had signed years ago. At the time, it felt like just another decision. Now, reading it again, she felt the weight of it. That decision had affected dozens of workers and their families. She remembered how easily she had approved it while thinking only. About numbers, she closed her eyes for a moment. That version of her was not cruel, just distant. She called for a review. Not because anyone demanded it, but because she needed to understand the human side of what she had done. Some advisors warned her it could open difficult conversations. She welcomed them. When people realized she was serious, honesty poured out. Stories of stress, of missed dinners, of silent sacrifices made at home so work could thrive, instead of defending herself. She listened. That evening, she went to the playground feeling heavier than usual. The sun was low, and the swings were almost empty. The child was there, sitting on the ground. Drawing with chalk, she sat nearby and watched the simple shapes appear on the concrete. "What are you drawing?" she asked. "A house," the child said. "One where everyone gets to come back." The words settled quietly inside her. They talked about small things. Favorite foods. Sounds they liked. Moments that made days feel shorter. None of it felt small. The guardian joined them later and spoke about how life kept moving forward even after loss. Not because pain disappeared, but because love made room for it. On her way home, she realized something else had changed. She no longer felt like she was borrowing peace from the playground. She was learning to carry it in the following weeks. She made choices that surprised people. She stepped away from one deal that promised profit, but demanded more exhaustion from already tired teams. She approved another that offered balance instead. Some called her soft. She didn't mind. One afternoon, she missed the playground. Work had run late. Guilt touched her, but it passed gently. She understood now that being present did not mean being perfect. When she returned the next day, the child ran up to her. "I saved you a spot," the child said. She smiled and sat down for the first time. She noticed how natural it felt to belong somewhere without earning it. And that, more than anything, told her she was still growing. Time moved forward quietly. Not in big jumps, but in small steps that slowly added up. She noticed it in how she slept better at night, in how her shoulders did not feel tight all the time, in how silence no longer scared her. At work, people began to speak more freely around her. Not because rules had changed, but because tone had. They saw she was still firm, still focused, but no longer distant. She noticed it too. A softer kind of respect had replaced the old fear. One day, a junior worker stayed behind after a meeting. Their hands shook slightly as they spoke. They thanked her for listening during a recent review, for asking how things were going at home, for not rushing the answer. She nodded, feeling something warm settle in her chest. Years ago, she would have brushed this off as unnecessary emotion. Now, she understood its value. Later that afternoon, she found herself standing in front of a building she had not visited in a long time. It was simple and worn, nothing like the places she usually went. She had once promised to come back. Life had gotten in the way. Inside, familiar smells and sounds surrounded her. People greeted her with surprise, then understanding. No one questioned why it had taken so long. They were just glad she was there. She stayed longer than planned, helping with small tasks, listening to stories, sharing quiet laughs. When she finally left, she felt lighter than she had all day. That evening at the playground, the child noticed her mood immediately. "You did something brave today," the child said. She smiled. "How do you know?" "You look tired in a good way," the child replied. She laughed softly. The child had a way of seeing past words. They sat together, watching the sky shift colors. The guardian spoke about the future. Not with strong plans, but with hope. "Not everything needs to be fixed," the guardian said. "Some things just need care." Those words stayed with her. In the weeks that followed, she felt the pull to create something new. Not another project for profit, but a space where people could pause, where work and life did not fight each other. She began sketching ideas on paper late at night. Simple ones. Flexible schedules. Support spaces. Time for families. Purpose beyond results. Nothing was announced yet. She wanted it to grow naturally. One afternoon, rain fell unexpectedly at the playground. Parents rushed to gather children. She watched the child laugh under the falling drops, arms open, unafraid. She realized then how much courage there was in staying open. As the rain eased and people returned, the child looked at her and said, "You stayed." "Yes," she replied. "I stayed." For the first time, she understood that staying was not about place. It was about choosing to remain present. Even when life changed, and she knew now that she would, the change inside her did not announce itself loudly. It moved slowly, like a calm river finding a deeper path. Each morning, she woke with the same responsibilities waiting for her, but the way she carried them had softened. She no longer felt like she was standing alone against the world. One evening, after a long but steady day, she returned home and stood by the window for a long time. The city lights blinked below like quiet reminders of how many lives were happening at once. For the first time, she did not feel separated from them. She felt part of something shared. Her phone buzzed with a message from work. A decision was needed by morning. In the past, this would have filled her with urgency and tension. Now, she read it, thought carefully, and placed the phone down. The answer would come. Tonight mattered too. She made a simple meal and sat at the table without distraction. She allowed herself to be still. That small act felt powerful. The next day at the playground, the air was cooler. Leaves had begun to turn color. The child arrived later than usual, holding something carefully in their hands. "I made this," the child said, placing a folded piece of paper beside her. She opened it slowly. Inside was a drawing of the playground, the bench, the swings, and two simple figures sitting together. "That's us," the child said proudly. Her throat tightened. She nodded, unable to speak for a moment. She folded the paper carefully and held it close. "No one ever drew me anything like this before," she said quietly. The child looked surprised. "Really?" "Yes," she said, "and I won't forget it." The guardian watched the moment with quiet understanding. They sat together while the child returned to play. "You changed," the guardian said gently, "but you didn't run away from who you were." She thought about that. "I think I finally stopped hiding from it." The guardian smiled. In the following weeks, her idea began to take shape. It was not a single big announcement, but a series of small actions that slowly connected. A space within the company where people could step away when life felt heavy. Counseling access. Time given instead of taken. Some advisors questioned the cost. She asked them the cost of burnout, of regret, of broken families. The room went quiet at the playground. The child started asking deeper questions about why people hurt others, about why grown-ups forgot promises. She answered honestly, without pretending to have all the solutions. "We try," she said one afternoon. "Sometimes we learn late. Late is still learning," the child replied. That stayed with her. One evening, something unexpected happened at the playground. An older man collapsed near the walking path. Panic spread quickly. Parents froze. Children cried. She moved without thinking. She knelt beside him, spoke calmly, asked others to call for help. The child stayed close, holding her coat steady and quiet. Emergency help arrived soon. The man was taken away, breathing stable. Afterward, her hand shook. The weight of the moment hit her fully. The child looked up at her. "You didn't leave." "No," she whispered. "I didn't." At night, she cried again. Not from pain, but from relief at knowing who she had become. Days later, she received a message from the man's family, delivered through the park office. Simple words of thanks. Proof that showing up mattered. Autumn deepened. The playground grew quieter as evenings came earlier. Still, she kept returning. One afternoon, the child sat beside her and spoke softly. "We might move soon." Her heart skipped. "Does that make you sad?" she asked. "Yes," the child said honestly. "But I remember things better now." She nodded, understanding more than the child knew. "I'll remember too," she said. They sat together, letting silence do its work. On the day the child came for the last time, there were no big goodbyes. Just time spent together. A shared snack, a final drawing pressed into her hand. When the child hugged her, it was light and quick, but it stayed with her. "Don't forget," the child said. "I won't," she promised. After they left, she stayed on the bench alone. The playground felt different, but not empty, because she carried it now. Months later. The changes she started became visible beyond her company. Other leaders asked questions. Programs spread. She never told the story publicly. Some miracles are meant to stay. Quiet, she still passed playgrounds sometimes. She still slowed down, and every time she did, she remembered the moment that taught her how to stay. Not as a title, not as power, but as a human being. Time changed everything, but it did not erase what mattered. The playground no longer waited for her the same way. Seasons moved on. Children grew. The bench she once sat on was repainted. Still, whenever she passed that park, something inside her slowed, as if her body remembered before her mind did. Work became fuller, not heavier. The changes she had started took root in ways she never expected. People stayed longer, not out of fear, but out of trust. Productivity improved, but she rarely spoke about numbers anymore. She spoke about balance, about rest, about being whole. Some leaders listened. Others dismissed it as temporary kindness. She did not argue with them. Proof was already showing itself quietly. One morning, she received a letter. Not an email. An actual envelope, slightly bent at the edges. The address was unfamiliar. She opened it slowly. Inside was a short note in a child's drawing. A house, a tree, and two figures sitting close together. The note was simple. They had moved. Life was still busy. But the child still talked about the playground and the bench and the woman who listened. Her hands trembled as she held the paper. She realized then that nothing meaningful is ever truly lost. That evening, she returned to the park alone. The sun was low, casting long shadows. She sat on the bench and closed her eyes. Letting memories arrive without resistance, she remembered the way she once felt empty, even when surrounded by success. She remembered her tears, her fear of slowing down, her belief that control meant safety. She no longer needed that belief. A group of teenagers passed by, laughing loudly. An elderly couple walked slowly along the path, holding hands. Life continued, layered and shared. A child nearby dropped their snack and began to cry. Without thinking, she stood and knelt beside them, helping clean the mess and offering calm words. The child looked at her, the wide eyes, and then smiled. It felt familiar. Later that week, she spoke at a small gathering. Not as a powerful figure, but as a person sharing a story without names or details. "I forgot how to stay," she said simply, and someone reminded me. The room stayed quiet long after she finished speaking. That night, she slept deeply. Months passed. She found joy in ordinary things. Cooking for herself, walking instead of driving, letting conversations take their time. Grief still visited now and then, but it no longer owned her. One rainy afternoon, she noticed a new playground being built near her office. Instead of glass and steel, she saw colors, open space, and benches inviting rest. She smiled. The miracle she once experienced was not meant to be repeated the same way. It was meant to spread, and in that quiet understanding, she knew the story was still living, not just in her, but in everyone who learned how to stay. The story did not end with applause or headlines. It never needed to. Years had passed since that first afternoon on the bench, yet the feeling it left behind never faded. It did not sit on the surface of her life. It lived deeper than that, shaping small choices and quiet pauses that no one else could fully see. Her work continued to grow, but it grew differently now. Decisions were still firm, but they were never rushed. She learned to ask herself one simple question before saying yes or no. Will this make life better for someone, or only louder? Sometimes the answer surprised her. She mentored others, not by telling them what to do, but by showing them how to listen. Many came to her expecting strategies, and left with something else instead. Permission to breathe. Permission to care. She noticed that many people were not tired from work alone. They were tired from feeling unseen one evening. After a long walk through the city, she found herself back near the old playground. It looked smaller now, or maybe she had simply grown. Children played where they always had. New faces, new laughter. Same truth. She sat on the bench, letting the familiar sounds wrap around her like an old blanket. A child nearby watched her curiously. "Do you come here a lot?" The child asked. "I used to," she said. "Why?" She thought for a moment. "Because this place taught me how to stay." The child nodded, as if that made sense, then ran back to play. She smiled. She no longer waited for signs or miracles. She had learned that miracles often come quietly, dressed as ordinary moments we almost missed at home that night. She opened a drawer filled with simple things: drawings, notes, reminders of days that mattered. She added one more paper to the stack. A short line she had written to herself: "Stay, not stay in one place. Stay awake, stay human, outside." The city carried on as it always had, busy, loud, alive, and somewhere in the middle of it all, a woman who once believed success meant never. Slowing down finally understood something better. Real success is knowing when to sit and who you are when you do. She turned off the light and let the night be quiet. The story did not end. It lived in her and in every person who learned how to stay, one ordinary moment at a time.